Morning all. I'm just going to drop a note about weather, temperature, etc. I've spoken to most of you across Monday and yesterday, and the weather is just showing another degree warmer today than it was yesterday. We don't know what it will be like on the day. So I just want to give a bit of advice in case the temperature suddenly notches up even further. I think for most of you where it's sitting at the moment, my advice would be perhaps take those first few kilometers even just 2 or 3 more seconds slowly than we've discussed in some of our conversations. Don't go out quickly at the start and get your heart rate to a point where it's just absolutely working in overdrive really early on. You'll run out of energy, you'll dehydrate, you'll just have a miserable back end of the race. So, I think we've already said good marathons happen because we're ending up taking those first few kilometers, we're almost treating it like the warm-up, so that then we've got the energy, we've got the leg muscle power and everything to keep us going right through the course of the race. If it starts to get even warmer than the temperature is currently showing, take that even more gently at the start. What the very best people at last year's races did was those who took the conditions into consideration and started out perhaps instead of just 5 seconds a kilometre slower than marathon pace, now we're actually saying the first few K I'm going to start out a good 10, 12 seconds slower. They had the more consistent races through to the whole of the end of the race. It was those people who went out either at marathon pace or just made no consideration whatsoever for the temperature, where when they got to kind of 30 kilometers, 19 miles in, were then walking because their heart and everything else just couldn't cope with what was being asked of them. The temperatures, by the way, are nowhere near last year's temperatures as of yet. So please don't start to worry about anything we're saying here at the moment. But just have that thought process in your head that if it does get warmer, think carefully about what your starting pace is going to be for those first 8K. Don't go and floor it. It's just not worth it. So what else can we end up doing? So practical things. Number one, if you've got a cap across your forehead, and that's the part that really gets burned, is really useful. Number two, make sure that when you are going to water stops or if you're taking your own water, I think I've said to most of you, stop at each 5 kilometre, grab a bottle of water, ending up just taking a couple of gulps. Don't be frightened if you need to, particularly in some of the later water stages, to walk through the water stops. Just giving your heart rate 5 to 10 seconds just to calm down whilst you're taking on that water can then help you in terms of the pace you're then still going at, rather than grabbing a bottle and keep going. I did that in Budapest last year, and I found it really useful to be able to just have just a handful of seconds, and I then saw my pace pick up again as I went back out again. So don't be frightened if you need to do that. The other thing I would suggest is, rather than just throwing the water bottle as we do after we've had our couple of sips, carry it for a good 800 meters, a kilometer, and take another couple of sips as you're going along. Don't just throw the bottle away. And I'd also suggest just pouring it over your head. If it is getting warm, that water's going to, dry off fairly quickly, but it will help in terms of how it's cooling you a little bit. Quite regularly, you'll find residents out with hoses. There was at Manchester on Sunday. So if you do see that, run through them. It will just help cool you down. Much as it's frustrating to then be wet for a little bit, it's better to do that than not to use them. Spoken about suntan lotion. I think with suntan lotion, if you're going to wear it, my only thing is just be really careful about the sort you put onto the forehead and not have it running into your eyes. Me personally, I find it really hard running when my eyes are then stinging because I've got suntan lotion in it. But certainly everywhere else, particularly if you're wearing a vest, make sure that you have got lots of suntan lotion across shoulders, neck, etc. I would also appreciate some of you may be wearing charity vests, but try to make sure that whatever clothing you are wearing is light coloured, white, whatever it might be. Don't wear black or dark coloured clothing because that will just absorb the heat. So you want something that will reflect it. Vaseline, I've spoken to most of you about this, but please do make sure you take some. So around the nipple area, around the underarm area, and around the groin area, they're the worst parts in terms of chafing. So just make sure you've got that as well. The other thing I'm going to say is gels. So don't not take gels on, but you might find that as your mouth is slightly more dry, if it gets particularly hot, gels then become more difficult to take on and digest. So almost get to a water stop, have some water first so that your mouth and your throat is, well lubricated, then take on the gel. Because it will help you in order to be able to swallow it. And you don't want to find yourself not taking on carbohydrates because you're slightly dehydrated in the mouth. I want to give the reassurance that at the moment the temperature isn't getting so silly that it's like last year. Most of you should still be able to go out and absolutely nail your races perfectly as you've trained for and we've spoken about over the last few days. But I did just want to make sure that you've got some thoughts in your head as to what do I do if that temperature does climb any further than it's currently showing. Hope that's useful. If any of you need to give me and drop me any messages, please do. And best of luck.